Welcome back. We made it back.
Success.
And it worked. Sometimes you just got to restart everything, right?
Here we are live again.
Live again. And we're so excited because we have our guest, and she is with us, joining us via Skype, Liz Kane. Do you want to talk a little bit about Liz?
Liz is the founder and executive director of Shire House. Before starting Shire House, Liz had been a full-time mom to her daughter Anna and son Paul. The decision to remain a full-time mom was made after Paul was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 5. And previously, Liz's work history was in business management, and now she's running Shire House. Welcome to the show, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
It's such a thrill to have you here. We were saying earlier that the power of a mom, you know, they what is it? Necessity is the mother
of invention. Yes, and so many things have grown out of that.
Absolutely, and I love the word mother in there because so often we see in autism, sometimes it's dads, but a lot of times it's the moms who are like, "There's nothing here for my kids, so I'm gonna make it." So tell us your story. When did you start Shire House?
A year after my son graduated from high school in 2012.
Okay, and where are you located, Liz?
We are in San Jose.
Okay, San Jose.
California.
And what was the pressing need?
Why did you do it?
Well, we were surprised to learn my son graduated on a particular day, and in making his arrangements for the following week, you know, psychiatrists, counselors, therapists, and so forth, we were told that all of those services dropped because he had graduated with a diploma. If he had graduated with a certificate, then those services would have continued for, you know, a few more years or indefinitely, depending on the need.
Right.
So that's where that awareness came about, and we started trying to figure out what to do next. And there weren't a lot of service providers for over 18. Just because the need is so big in the school systems, they tend to use the providers that are available. So again, that being aware of that need, all of those issues have been addressed through Shire House now.
So it's almost like a detriment that he graduated with a diploma because there was nothing left for him, no services.
Correct. Yes.
And how long ago did he graduate? How many years ago was that?
He graduated in 2011.
Okay.
And tell us exactly what the structure is of the program. What is Shire House?
Well, I structured it to meet not just the services that Paul still needed, but he also wanted to go to college, and I wanted him to have the college experience, the college dorm experience. So we wanted to have a house, and we now do a large house with co-ed. We have, so the kids are 18 through 28, and they come with us while they are attending college or wanting to, and we help them with that process. Sometimes they don't want to go to college, so we help them through the employment process, search and finding and so forth. Our in-house services are more therapeutic. We address any behavior or emotional or social issues that the client might have that are keeping them from doing or being where they would like to be at this stage of their life.
Tell us a little bit about the typical Shire House resident. Who's that going to be? Who's it right for?
Shire House is appropriate for someone, a young adult who, like I said, wants to attend college but needs the supported living environment where you know, there's daily supports that will help him in that particular area. It might also be appropriate for someone who's learning to manage a more severe emotional issue like depression or high anxiety, and they come to us and we help them learn to manage that particular diagnosis so that they can again start living the life that they envision themselves to live.
So is it
also might be.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Is it primarily for kids with higher functioning autism and Asperger's?
Yes, we're addressing that particular niche of the spectrum.
Okay.
And it could be men or women, and but largely between the ages of 18 and 28.
Yes.
Okay.
But then, because like my son is just turned 25, and he was our first client, but he has transitioned out because we are a transitional program. We help them transition into whatever independent living setting that they choose, whether it's a college dorm, or their own apartment, or we've also created what we call our shared housing model, where the young adults go and live on a more permanent, less supported living. So that's another need that came about, and we found a way to solve that particular need.
And you also address social issues you mentioned behavior, but you have begun to address social concerns, correct?
Yes, we've addressed those from the beginning. A lot of our young adults need those support, social skill interventions, and then we also have that's why we started our social opportunity, the Friday night social, where we open our doors to other young adults on the autism spectrum. And the guests do not, it's not just for high functioning, it's for anybody on the spectrum. So we have a variety of levels of function that come to our Friday social.
And that's every Friday from 6 to 9, correct?
Yes. And
okay.
We've been doing that a few months after we started Shire House. And it's every Friday, even if it's a holiday. They need that consistency to know that there's a place for them to go. And it's been really neat to see, throughout these years, the young adults make friends and then continue and build on those friendships, and which leads us to our mission, which is creating that community for them.
What is the goal that you would like your clients to reach, Liz? What's the overall goal?
Their particular level of self-management and independent living. So some of our clients that have transitioned out, they might still need some supports in some areas, so we continue to provide those supports at the independent living setting that they are now in.
Okay. Let's talk turkey for a second, because my overwhelming question here is, what is the cost and who's the funding source? Is this all private pay, or does the regional center help to defray cost, or does insurance? Who pays for this?
Well, most of our clients do not qualify for SARC, or did not qualify for a regional center because they were considered too high functioning. So we also a nonprofit. From the beginning, we incorporated as a nonprofit. It is private pay. Our monthly fee starts at $4,500, and that includes room and board and the supportive services that I've mentioned. But it depends on the level of supports that the client needs, but that's the highest cost there is. And then as a nonprofit, we do fundraising for our scholarship fund, because not every client is able to meet the costs.
Yeah.
So we've always had one or two clients on a scholarship.
Wow. Well, it's certainly a wonderful thing, and I wish that places like the regional center would look at this and see that what is the alternative. That we can't just be saying, okay, you got a diploma
and goodbye.
There you go. We hear Joanne Laura talk all the time about it's the school to couch pipeline for our kiddos on the spectrum. And so, somebody's got to see that funding needs to be made available for this population.
Right.
And are you? Yes. What would you like to say, Liz?
Well, I totally agree with you. Right now, we are not doing any sort of advocacy at a state level. We are in conversations with the regional center as to how Shire House's services can be offered to those that are a SARC client. But we're in those conversations. It's not something that has started.
Well, I want to ask you to do me a favor, because it's programs like this that give us all hope, right? And if you will just continue doing what you're doing and keep good records and take data on the outcomes, eventually we'll be able to take that and put that in front of people who get it,
right?
And do something with that. So I want you to keep doing what you're doing, but keep the records and take the data.
Yes, we are.
We need to have what you're doing on a larger scope. That's for sure.
Yes, and we have helped two other families start a similar program in their state.
Oh, great!
Not using our name, but again, from the beginning, I wanted to build this in a way that we could share it with other parents that wanted to, had a home maybe and wanted to replicate what we were doing.
Right.
And
so if people want to reach out to you, Liz, because they either want to have their son or daughter be a Shire House client, or because they want to create this program where they live, how can they get a hold of you?
The best way is to email me at liz@shirehouse.org.
Okay. And if they go to shirehouse.org,
they can
find out more information as
yes,
well.
Yes, our website.
Well, yes. I think it's remarkable. It's that spirit of the mom who's going to make something happen one way or the other, right, that cannot be denied. Right. So we salute you, Liz, for how is your son doing?
He's doing well. He's actually more social than now than we would like him to be, and, so that he can focus and finish his degree.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, what a great story. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing.
You're very welcome. Thank you again.
All right, thank you. Good to have you with us.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with Donnie Welch,
the poetry man, I call him.
Sensory reading.
Yeah.
This starter kit that he's got that is really, really fascinating. If you're a teacher, you're going to want it. If you're homeschooling it, you're going to want it. Can't wait to talk to him about it.
Great way to make poetry accessible to our kids.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Riley has high-functioning autism, and I'd say I noticed somewhere between 9 months and a year. Looking back now, I can tell you everything. I mean, there was no pointing, there was no shared experiences, speech was not coming, the interactive play was not coming, those things weren't happening. You go to the pediatrician, they tell you, well, sometimes boys are slow or things might take a while to come along, but it still wasn't happening. And right when he hit the 2-year-old room in preschool is when the wheels fell off the wagon. That's when we got some intervention. That's when we figured out, how are we going to address this problem. The first thing I did was I got a mentor, because there's no book on what to do with your autistic child. I mean, there's many books, but each path is individual. So I got a mentor, a really nice woman named Marlene. She has a daughter with Asperger's, and she told me, go to a psychiatrist so you can have your child fully diagnosed and a rock-solid diagnosis that can't really be attacked. Call CARD and do whatever they tell you to do. That was probably the thing she talked about the most. Get in touch with CARD. She actually put me in touch with Evelyn from CARD, and calling CARD was like amazing, because I really felt like things were finally going to be okay. We were going to get the help we needed.
We tried a number of different things before we could get into CARD, and you could really see the difference in the data keeping, really addressing what his issues were, whereas the other places we had been, it seemed pointless to me.
We've talked about this, and I feel like we met a lot of really nice, well-intentioned people.
Right.
And then when we got to CARD, we met a lot of really nice people who could help us because they had the experience. It was ABA, which I think is the only way to go with your child if you're trying to overcome autism. And if you go to CARD, the people are so qualified, and there's so much of a database on how to approach this. It's just like they come right in, and we started off with, let's have Riley sit down for 2 seconds, because he couldn't even get that. And we worked on baby steps until now he's in 1st grade and he's working at grade level. So it just starts with baby steps and it keeps working on because they have a way to approach every single problem, every single tantrum, every single thing you're going to come up with. They have a way to approach it and help you get through it.
Yeah, I'm always amazed, like at our clinic, we'll be having a specific problem and how good they are, all of them, the therapists and your team leader, at coming up with a solution, something to try, and it almost always works. Whatever the particular behavior you're trying to deal with, they're really good at them. They know the answers.
He likes a lot of stuff, I think, regular 7-year-olds like. He likes to swim.
He loves to swim.
He's a fish. Likes to ride a scooter, loves Toy Story, loves playing on the iPad.
Loves Justin Bieber.
Good job, buddy.
High five.
High five.
High five.
Yeah.
CARD's been good about encouraging us to do things that maybe wouldn't occur to us, like him learning to ride a bike was really them saying, hey, it's time, let's do this, and helping us do that. And so he can ride a bike. He's still working on the brakes a little bit, but you know, he can pedal a bike. We can go to Balboa Park and he'll ride happy as a clam along the bike path.
We are back, and as promised, we now are joined by guest Donnie Welch. Donnie teaches creative writing at the Rebecca School in New York City. He's been working in neurodiverse education for over 4 years, is a published poet and children's author, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his work in this poetry workshop model he's doing, and in the sensory motor poetry. It's the sensory motor poetry workshop. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
It's a thrill. We love to have fabulous educators on the show. We can never get enough of that. So thank you so much for joining us. Talk to us about what sensory motor poetry is.
Sure. So in a nutshell, sensory motor poetry is a poetry model that involves movement, right? I like to describe it as a workshop that's grounded in social emotional learning, based on the idea that movement learning and literacy learning go hand in hand, right? The movement helps us understand rhythm, rhythm helps us understand poetry, and that poetry helps us understand each other.
Love it. But for people who've never seen this in practice, what's that look like?
Sure. So there are two kind of modalities of it. One involves a lot of messy tabletop tactile sensory play. And so in that, we'll break down the imagery of a poem per se. So in a poem like Shel Silverstein's Alligator's Toothache, I might have a whole model alligator made out of Play-Doh, like a model alligator head. And then I'll have students put the teeth up all back together as a group. So it's a collaborative effort. You know, you got everyone working together towards a common goal. And then as the groups develop and mature together and grow together, we get a little more active. We get a little more movement-based. And what that looks like is a group of students supporting one another in a circle while one student reads. And so there's this interchange of reader and beat keeper, and it's something you might see as part of a hip-hop cipher or a bluegrass round or something reminiscent of jazz or big band where each player takes a turn playing a solo. It's this kind of empathic back and forth of reader and supporter that plays into that social emotional work and gets students working on reading and excited about reading and writing.
And you're doing these kinds of things with kids of all different kinds of abilities, is that correct?
Correct.
And what are you finding?
That it's a lot of fun.
And they're learning, right? Isn't that the big takeaway, is that when you make that kind of a rich environment experience, they're learning on all different kinds of levels?
Absolutely. I like to describe it as social emotional literacy learning. There's one little story in particular I love to tell where we were working on this poem about Transformers in one of my groups, one of the more movement-oriented groups. And in it, this student realized that we had used the pronoun he a bunch of times. And we were writing, I believe the lines were, Ironhide busted his leg during a fight with Starscream. He couldn't get it back, so he got a peg leg. And this student was like, wait, we've said he too many times. Who are we talking about? And when this other student heard this little question, they stepped up and they said, well, there's only one character who has a busted leg, so we must be talking about Ironhide here. And it was this amazing peer critique moment where these two students were able to give each other this little literary feedback based on one another's creative work and based on their genuine interest in each other's creative work.
And how old were those students?
So that was like a middle school age group. So I believe 13.
But these are the kinds of conversations that we all long for, right?
Right.
To be able to have our kids reading something and delving that deep into it.
Why is poetry, of all the enriching artistic activities, why is poetry so important, especially for the population, the autism population?
I think poetry in particular is a genre that's so interested in voice. It's something that you talk about in fine arts settings, it's something you talk about in community settings, and this idea of voice is central. And it's central to what I'm doing with the workshops as well. I like to say that the workshops are a tool to practice self-expression and in turn self-advocacy. And there's this wonderful quote actually from Dead Poets Society. It's right after the scene where Robin Williams has his kids tear the introduction out of the textbook. And it's, we don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we're members of the human race. And I think there's this innate desire to communicate an inner life, regardless of your neural makeup or regardless of your ability level. And I see poetry in particular as my personal passion, as a vehicle to help these students express their inner life.
So talk to us a little bit about how this workshop got started and where you hope it's going to go.
So it started in the library during summer school, actually. I was approached by one of the education directors at Rebecca School, and she asked me if I'd be interested in starting an affinity group. And I said yes, because, as a poet, the idea of running a workshop in New York City is the dream come true. But I didn't really know what I was going to do, so I went in the first day with a Shel Silverstein poem and a ball of model magic, which is just like, I don't know if it's off-brand Play-Doh, but it's a kind of Play-Doh, and went at it. And from there, it slowly over time grew. It started with 5 students. As I got more comfortable and as my lesson plans kind of grew in complexity and began to have a focus, those 5 students slowly turned into 5 groups, and those 5 groups slowly turned into seeing a majority of the school. And I'm hoping to keep spreading it. Next year, I'll be moving into a more part-time liaison role, Rebecca, with the hopes of reaching out to other institutions, other schools, and bringing it into community settings as well.
And you recently self-published a sensory reading starter kit that has 25 workshop plans. Tell us just a little bit about that. Shannon's got it right here.
It's great.
Yeah, thank you. So that first year after the just rolling in with model magic incident, I took some time to really think about what I wanted to do. And so I wanted to keep it tabletop for that first year, and I started getting a little more imaginative. The alligator's toothache lesson I told you about at the start was really one of my first. And so the sensory reading starter kit is a collection of my lesson plans from that first year. And so it's 25 lessons that all involve fun, messy, tactile, hands-on play that relate to different poems. And some of the poems in there are from really canonical names like Langston Hughes or Emily Dickinson. Some of them are from more contemporary authors like Richard Brautigan or Dorothea Lasky. But all of them and all the lessons involve taking these abstract ideas like imagery, like theme, like motif, and making them something hands-on that parents and teachers and students can all have fun with together.
And how can they get this starter kit?
So if you visit my site, it's www.donniewelchpoetry.com, and then you go over to the shop section, it'll be right there.
Okay.
Really remarkable. It's, the thing is they're very well written lessons. It gives you everything that you need in one column, of materials in the prep, and a parent who's never taught before could do this.
That's a good endorsement from you.
Yes, it is. But a teacher can take this and run far with it, right? But a parent, I know many of you are homeschooling, and what's great is that, as I see this, you can be hitting literature standards and art standards while you're doing sensory play with your kid that your OT would be thrilled with. Have I got that right, Donnie?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wrote it with the intention of parents and caregivers in mind. You don't need to have an MFA or a BFA or any kind of A to really just do it. You just have to be willing to have fun with language.
Okay, great.
It's really remarkable. So again, your website, let's put that back up there one more time, DonnieWelchPoetry.com. We think you're a remarkable young educator.
Thank you.
And so if people would like for the workshop to come to their school, do they just get the starter kit or can they actually have you come to the school?
Both. Yeah, I'd love to have my starter kit end up in new places, but I'd love to come to new places too. On my website, there's a contact page and it just goes right to my email. And I'd love to get the conversation started. And next year, I'm looking for a lot of new places to collaborate with. Yeah.
And do you ever just go and educate educators on how to do this?
Yeah, recently I've done a lot of conference work. I've been fortunate enough to travel kind of around the East Coast and a little bit into the Midwest doing different conferences. And I'd love to start getting into schools and really working with educators to get excited about running some poetry workshops.
Fabulous.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us today, Donnie. We've appreciated having you on the show, and good luck with the program.
We're going to take a break, but Donnie, stay with us during the break. I want to talk to you during the break, but we'll be back to close out the show. Stick with us.
Cool, thank you.
So we're going to do down dog next. So with down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, all right? So for me, what I'm going to do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat, and then I'm going to tuck my toes. And then my head is also going to drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay. And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape.
Or V.
Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Then it's a U.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet. But also sometimes what feels really good is going down on your forearms like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor. You still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes. But rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. Okay. So, yep. You're going to do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Or are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good. Good.
So that was
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Two amazing guests in two very different areas. It always inspires me that I don't think I felt comfortable in the autism community until I found my niche. Mm-hmm. How about you?
Did you? Same thing.
I mean, I always felt like I was an outsider looking in the window and going, everybody else seems to have figured this out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we got the ABA thing started and that made me feel better. But it wasn't until, for those of you who don't know, first I had a radio show that was called Everyday Autism Miracles. And when somebody offered me that, I remember feeling like, you don't want me. Well, I would not be good at that. That would not be a thing for me. I don't think I can do that. But I was like, oh no, I promised I would help whoever I could, and if this is what showed up, clearly I have to show up, right? And so I got started on that, and I always felt like, oh, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing here. You know what I mean?
We all take it day by day,
right? But at a certain point, I was like, oh, I really felt like a card-carrying member of the autism community,
right?
And I still say that. I know that. You know, in talking to self-advocates, for them, the autism community is just people who are on the autism spectrum. I don't experience it that way for myself. I experience that we are all a part of the autism community.
I agree. The parents, the siblings, everybody that's a part of this journey.
Anybody who loves somebody on the autism spectrum, I believe, is part of the autism community.
I agree.
But I didn't feel like I really was in the community until a little while after I started with a radio show.
I didn't feel like it until I started doing some fundraising and got involved in that way.
Yeah. Where you suddenly feel like, oh, I have a seat at this table.
Yes.
I have an opinion. I have somebody I care about. I have somebody I'm fighting for, and I care about other people.
Right. And I want to help other people. I want to empower them as well.
And you get connected to other people. So anyway, hopefully you can find your niche. And when you do, it is a thing of beauty, an absolute thing of beauty. So tomorrow,
so we're out of time, but tell us about tomorrow's show.
So tomorrow is a really cool show. We're going to be talking to a gentleman in India who is an OT in India. We're going to talk a little bit about what the services are like in India, because we have a lot of a growing number of viewers that are in India, and so we thought that would be a really fun thing to do. And we also have on a mom of a special needs child, not autism, but other issues that saw a need and created something called the Inclusion Clubhouse. They've got a prom that's coming up in a couple of days.
Fun.
So she's going to be on the show. And of course, we're welcoming back Bonnie Yates, who's been away on, Legal Matters, we call it here on the show.
Okay.
And we've had a bunch of questions come in that we've got ready for her.
Right.
And of course, on Thursday, we do the jargon of the day, which for a lot of us, that's, it started out that we hated the jargon the most. And now that's part of our most fun part is the jargon of the day. Plus our mindfulness moment on Thursdays, which I absolutely love. So that and much more, and who knows, because it's live, anything can happen. Thanks for sticking through us through our issues, and thanks to Samantha and her cool head for working it out. And we will be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.